They were born out of ambition, created to solve problems and push limits. For a moment, they looked like the future, but the same progress that gave them life quickly left them behind. What was meant to be the answer became the burden, and in silence they remain, stripped of purpose but heavy with meaning. These helicopters once saved lives and carried heavy cargo. This one is a Me-26 with a lift capacity of up to 44,000 pounds, a 6-blade rotor, and 2 turbo shaft engines. It ended up here for several reasons: major accidents, incidents with casualties that complicated return to service, and the economic impracticality of repairs. After operators collapsed in the 1990s and parts supply was disrupted, many airframes were simply written off or brought to a boneyard for stripping. The site is a large open pad near a former airbase where retired machines were gathered, partly dismantled, with engines ripped out or bearing signs of bullet and shrapnel damage. Fuselage still shows tail numbers, maintenance markings, and traces of service in extreme conditions. Here the blades are covered in rust, cargo bays are empty, and cockpits have broken instruments. This vessel once dumped coal and cargo between port terminals. The SS Airfield is an early 20th century steamship that served during World War II and on peacetime runs afterward. When it was retired, the owners decided to scrap her. Repairs and towing to a steelworks proved too expensive, so the hull was taken to a sheltered lagoon and left grounded on shallow water, a cheaper disposal option. Parts and equipment were removed for sale, engines sent for spares, and the remainder simply abandoned. The site is an old industrial bay near the port with little current, where silt quickly buried the hull. Conditions favored plant growth, letting mangrove roots and grasses take hold on the deck and in cracks, turning the ship into a living island. The plating shows cut marks, hull numbers, and fuel stains. Some compartments still contain remnants of wiring and furniture. Here, the SS Airfield has become an iconic example of industrial heritage becoming part of nature. The hull is being worn away by corrosion, while simultaneously serving as new habitat for birds and plants. Despite its appeal to photographers and tourists, the structure is unstable and continues to slowly decay. These rails once served mines and factories. Now they lie silent on the plateau. This is the train graveyard in Bolivia. From the 1940s through the 1980s, retired wagons and locomotives were brought here straight from mines and industrial sites. Locomotive depots and private mining companies facing falling profitability made an economic decision. It was cheaper to tow discarded consists to the nearby wasteland and leave them than to haul the metal to distant scrap yards. Often railway crews simply uncoupled cars and dragged them a few kilometers to the dump, sometimes loading them onto flatbeds and towing them with tractors. Several factors drove this mass abandonment. The collapse of commodity prices, mine closures in the 1980s to 1990s, reduced freight routes, and the high cost of transporting ore. Many companies that owned rolling stock went bankrupt or were nationalized and dissolved. Administrations simply removed unserviceable equipment from operation and left it at the roadside. Parts were stripped on site, engines, fittings, metal panels, anything that could fetch money was cut off and sent for sale. The rest remained. The climate here is extremely arid and high altitude, low humidity and cold nights. Metal has therefore undergone slow corrosion. Many cars still bear legible markings and numbers. Local residents have used some bodies as storage or shelters, and tourists have turned the site into a photo attraction, a further sign of economic change. From an industrial hub, it became a fragile source of income through tourism. These steel platforms once stood at sea to protect the coast from enemy aircraft. The Moncel forts are a series of small defensive forts installed in the North Sea during World War II. They were built by British engineers in 1942 to 1943. Sections were assembled in shipyards, towed into position, and mounted on steel legs in the water. A fast and relatively cheap solution for early warning and anti-aircraft defense. After the war, the need disappeared. Some forts were handed to the Royal Navy, others were abandoned due to maintenance costs and corrosion. In the 1950s to 1960s, some forts were repurposed for radical projects, from pirate radio stations to artistic events. Over time, many platforms were left to decay. Strong currents and salt water eroded the metal supports. Upkeep became too expensive for governments or owners. Several forts were damaged by storms or by demolition blasts. Some were deliberately attacked by rave or pirate groups using them as bases. Others simply stand as rusting crosses on the water. Roomy chambers and corridors inside are empty, and the exterior shows holes and breached decking. Today, the Mount-Sel forts are a popular subject for urban decay photography and studies of marine architecture. Some fortifications are partially blown apart or lie against the waves. Access is restricted due to collapse risk and legal controls. Their walls display a mix of wartime markings, radio station graffiti, and murals. Once this submarine was a weapon of invisible war. Now it stands on land, cut up and silent. The Submarine B-307 is a Soviet diesel-electric boat of the Paltus type, approximately, which served with the Black Sea Fleet during the Cold War. After decommissioning, the boat was sent for breaking up in the 1990s. The collapse of the USSR, fleet reductions, and lack of funding made preservation impossible. Some hulls were hauled ashore for dismantling and sale as scrap. Instrument panels and engines were removed for reuse or resale. Bureaucracy and lack of funds often left hulls semi-ruined, cut-apart sections, open torpedo tubes, and empty, gutted conning towers. The storage site is a former port area, or dry dock, where retired ships and submarines were brought. Submarines were towed to the quay and placed on supports for cutting. Sometimes hulls were left outdoors for years, exposed to corrosion and vandalism. Hull plating bears codes and fleet markings. Inside are empty instrument bays, torn crew quarters, and traces of daily life. Some units were retired due to obsolete systems or incidents that made modernization impractical. Others fell victim to politics, fleet downsizing, inability to fund upgrades, and shifting strategic priorities. Where crew footsteps and the smell of diesel once filled the boat, now there is only silence and the wind whispering through rusted hatches. It once carried heavy equipment and troops across continents. Now it sits abandoned on a ramp. The An-22 Ante is a Soviet transport giant, one of the largest of its class, built for massive airlift operations in the 1960s to 70s. Reasons for abandonment: costly, complex upkeep, shortage of spare parts after the USSR's collapse, and technical incidents that rendered some airframes uneconomical to repair or modernize. Some aircraft were written off after hangar fires or damage from hard landings. Others were retired when military programs closed or fleets shrank. The site is a large ramp near an aircraft factory or military airfield where retired planes were stored or broken up, and 22s were often dismantled for parts, engines, avionics, and systems repurposed or sold while fuselages remained. Sometimes airframes were towed here from other bases, partially stripped or following accidents. The skin shows service wear, test camp dirt, tail markings, fire extinguisher residue, or scorched panels. Wings and landing gear are sometimes partially dismantled. Cockpits have broken instruments and empty panels. Because of its huge size, the An-22 attracts photographers and aviation enthusiasts. But restoration requires massive investment, far more than the cost of a serviceable aircraft. Some examples became sources of spares for other planes. Others remain on lots as relics of heavy airlift history. These vessels once patrolled the seas and hunted convoys. Now one of them lies abandoned at the quay, cut up and silent. An abandoned German U-boat, a remnant of 20th century submarine programs that was retired after defeat and subsequent demilitarization. After the war, hulls were hauled ashore under the supervision of military and industrial crews. Instruments, torpedo tubes, and engines were removed for study or resale. The remainder was cut up on site, cheaper than towing intact hulls to steelworks. Some boats were damaged during towing or storms and became unfit for restoration. The plating shows impact marks, Victor fleet stamps, and traces of Bulgarian or British cutting. Inside are empty conning towers, ripped out instruments, corrosion, and remnants of crew interiors. The smell of metal and old hydraulics still lingers in the seams. Local workers used parts for technical jobs, and some sections became training rigs or tourist exhibits. This boat exemplifies post-war practicality. Equipment that once carried out strategic missions turned into a material resource and a memory of policy choices. Once hundreds of passengers boarded flights from these cabins, now huge fuselages sit in the sand at a jumbo graveyard. The Boeing 747 is an icon of the intercontinental flight era and is now often retired due to age, fuel economics, and costly upgrades. After incidents or when airlines modernized fleets with more economical types, many airframes were towed to special dismantling sites. Large aircraft were moved to ramps or desert lots, where engines, avionics, and valuable components were removed for reuse or sale. The remaining hulls were left outdoors, sometimes dozens side by side. Such graveyards are usually remote airports or desert areas with low corrosion rates, where it's cheaper to tow aircraft than to ship them for recycling. Here, 747s often sit tilted, windowless, with removed tail sections and sawed-off wings. Fuselages still bear airline titles, layers of paint and scuff marks from ground crews. Economics dominate. Reduced demand for large wide bodies after rising fuel prices, high costs to meet modern standards, and the fleet reductions of the 2020s pandemic drove waves of retirements. The most valuable parts, engines, landing gear, and avionics, are removed first. The rest remain as the visual truth of an aviation era. Walking through the cabins and empty saloons, you feel the scale and silence. Hundreds of seats that once held lives and farewells are now outlines in the dust. Once hailed as the Soviet answer to Concorde, the Tu-144 was a supersonic dream that promised to shrink continents and rival the West. Its sleek delta wings and needle nose once sliced through the skies at twice the speed of sound, carrying passengers on a wave of Cold War pride. But behind the glamour lay flaws: noisy engines, high fuel consumption, and safety concerns. After a tragic crash at the 1973 Paris Air Show and short, unreliable passenger service, the program quietly faded. Only a handful of flights ever carried paying passengers before the project was abandoned. Today, several airframes remain as haunting relics. Some stand exposed on forgotten tarmacs, their fuselages weathered, windows clouded, and interiors stripped. Others sit locked away in remote hangars, shadows of the ambition that created them. Walking around one of these giants, you feel both awe and melancholy. The pointed nose and massive intakes still whisper of speed, but inside, empty cabins echo with silence. What was once a symbol of progress now rests like a frozen experiment. These ships once landed troops and armored vehicles directly onto beaches under fire. Now their hulls lie half submerged in the sands of the Pacific. LST, landing ship, tank, vessels that played a key role in decisive World War II amphibious operations. They landed tanks during Normandy, delivered reinforcements in North African campaigns, and put troops ashore in hard-to-reach Norwegian coves during the Norwegian campaign. At Espiritu Santo and other Pacific bases, these ships served as supply platforms for airfields and evacuation points for the wounded. After the war, many LSTs were retired. Some were deliberately sunk as artificial reefs or barriers. Others were dismantled for parts on site, and many hulls were left in shallow water because towing them back to industrial centers was too expensive. A few were converted into floating docks or temporary piers, solutions that often led to partial cutting and abandoned remains along the shore. The exterior shows layers of combat wear, camouflage blotches, unit numbers, and shrapnel damage. Inside are traces of haste, sealed medical crates, timber chocks for tanks, and remnants of instructional posters for assault troops. Locals salvaged steel beams for building, and nature has begun reclaiming the metal. Seaweed and coral polyps grow where military gear once lay. In the blue waters off the coast of Italy rests one of the strangest monuments ever placed by human hands. It's the Christ of the Abyss, a massive bronze statue of Jesus, arms raised toward the surface, standing not on land, but at the bottom of the sea. The original was lowered into the Mediterranean in 1954 near San Frutuoso, at the spot where a diver had lost his life. Since then, other copies were sunk in the Caribbean and even in Florida. Each one was placed as both memorial and message, a symbol of peace, faith, and protection for those who venture beneath the waves. Over time, the ocean itself became part of the artwork. Corals cling to the bronze, schools of fish circle its head. The statue's face is now softened with marine growth, looking less like polished metal and more like an ancient relic lost to time. Divers who visit describe the scene as surreal, light flickering down, the silent figure reaching upward, and the endless water pressing from all sides. Standing there feels less like seeing a statue and more like stumbling upon a forgotten temple hidden in the deep. On the black sands of Iceland's southern coast lies one of the most haunting crash sites in the world. Here rests the broken frame of a U.S. Navy Douglas DC-3 Dakota, left behind after a forced landing in 1945. The aircraft ran out of fuel during a storm and came down hard on Solheimasandur Beach. Miraculously, every crew member survived, but the plane itself was abandoned, too costly to recover from such a remote place. Decades of wind, sand, and sea spray stripped it bare. The fuselage is twisted and hollow, its wings long gone, its cockpit exposed to the elements. Against the endless black desert of volcanic sand, the silver wreck looks otherworldly, as if dropped from the sky of another planet. Visitors hike miles across open ground just to reach it. Standing beside the empty shell, you hear nothing but the wind tearing through the frame. They were once loud, powerful, and full of life. Now only silence surrounds them. Structures that carried hope, pride, or ambition have become empty shells, lingering at the edge of time. But the end of one story is often the beginning of another. In their decay, they transform into symbols and questions, whispers of the past reshaped by the present. Walking among them, you don't just see ruins. You feel the weight of what was and the mystery of what still lies ahead.